Hi guys, we are here to talk on the topic that says excuses. Most Christians need both fewer and more good excuses. To understand the apparent contradiction in that statement, we need only remember C's. Lewis Wise words that, in our own case we accept excuses too easily, in other people's we do not accept them easily enough. In other words, while humanly it is easy for us to excuse our own faults, excusing and forgiving even the small faults of others seems so much harder. The excuses that we make for our own behavior could be the subject of a book themselves, but in this chapter we need to look only at the kind of excuses we need more of, the excuses we grant other people for their behavior. Of course, we are not talking about excusing heinous crimes and sins, but the everyday failings of different types that we and other people all have. It is these small things that we need to learn to excuse more consistently in other people, not just because the offenses are so often small, but also, and more importantly, because in real-life interactions they are so frequent that it is imperative we learn to handle them successfully as Christians. Not surprisingly, the Bible addresses these small, but nevertheless potentially relationship-damaging, faults that we all have to some extent or another. You may not recall a specific verse regarding forgiving the small things, but there is one nonetheless. In his letter to the Colossians, the Apostle Paul wrote, "Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you." Colossians 3:13. If we look closely at this verse, we find that Paul is, in fact, talking specifically about both small and large problems that need to be forgiven. When he writes "forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone," he is talking about grievous or serious issues that need to be forgiven. But notice that directly before giving this command he gives another, "Bear with one another." These brief 4 words, only 2 words in the Greek in which the New Testament was written, are where forgiving the small things comes in. The word Paul used for bear with is anakomenoi, a form of the Greek word for tolerate, put up with, or even endure. Now think about this. We do not say we put up with or endure things we like. We speak of putting up with things we don't like and that we find difficult to deal with, ranging from unpleasant tasting medicine to the sometimes hurtful remarks or behavior of other people. This is what forbearing in the King James Version, or bearing with in many modern translations, means. It means we are to put up with and endure, if necessary, the small faults of others as part of forgiveness. The New Living Translation conveys the sense of what Paul wrote very well: you must make allowance for each other's faults. Colossians 3:13 NLT. Making allowance for other people's faults is where our need to excuse others comes in. We must be willing to make an excuse, as it were, for someone's minor faults that affect us. We must presume until and unless it is proven otherwise that they didn't realize the effect of their behavior, or that there were extenuating circumstances, or that we ourselves may have caused the person's behavior more than we realized. Making excuses for others involves willing ourselves to live in a positive attitude toward them, presuming the best and hoping the best in each situation where we potentially might be offended by some small thing. That is part of loving others as we should, and Paul talks about this specifically in his great chapter on love, where he tells us that love always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. 1 Corinthians 13:7. We might presume that hopes in this verse means hopes regarding future things, but biblical scholars agree that is not Paul's sense in this statement. His use of the word in this context is clearly referring to the conduct of others, toward putting up with things, enduring things if necessary, because we hope or presume for the best in the situation. That is why Paul places the word hopes in this sense between trusts and perseveres in verse 7. When people do things that hurt us in minor, but perhaps frequent or unthinking ways, we need to trust that the hurt was unintentional, to hope for the best by being willing to mentally grant them an excuse, and to persevere with them in patience. But do we do this? Are we as good at coming up with excuses for other people's behavior as we are for our own? It is a serious question worthy of some careful thought. In reality, we probably all need to be better at thinking of excuses for others, because doing that on a daily basis can be an effective part of forgiving. The excuses we grant others help us to forgive the small things, and forgiving small things becomes practice for forgiving larger things. We all need more of those excuses in our lives. as part of the forgiving to which we are called. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel for more of our videos.